Hi, I'm Kellie Murphy-Ringate, Fire Marshal and Public Educator for the Excelsior Fire District, and welcome to First Responder TV, your local public safety source, featuring training exercises, safety tips, and much more. Here's what's coming up on First Responder TV. I'll talk with Jason Savageau with Current Electric Systems about electrical fire safety. Scam Alert will give you an update on scams that have been targeting citizens in the local lake area. Sergeant Rick Waldon from the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office Water Patrol talks about snowmobile safety on the lake. Welcome to First Responder TV. Today we are interviewing Jason Savageau from Current Electric Systems. The first thing I want to ask you is tell us a little bit about your background.
When I turned 18, I graduated high school, went right in the Air Force, and they said, Jason, you're going to be an electrician. And so fast forward, 27 years later, and here I still am, right in the trade.
So how long have you been in business?
10 years now.
10 years.
So that was September this year, we hit the 10-year mark.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Thank you.
So let's dig into some electrical stuff. In your home, are there warning signs that your home sends you that something's wrong with the electrical system? And should those warning signs be heeded or ignored?
Any warning sign I think we should pay attention to, right? So one telltale sign is you'll see what manifests as voltage drops. So let's say the furnace kicks on or the dryer kicks on and you notice your lights kind of do this. That can be a sign of several things going on. Either that's loose connections in the electrical panel. We could have just a general kind of overload of the electrical service itself. We could have a capacitor failing in the air conditioner. So there's several things that can cause that kind of manifest.
Your lights dimming isn't a normal thing?
No, it's not.
Okay. So I take it when I pop a circuit breaker, as we would call it.
Right.
I shouldn't keep on going back and turning it on every time it pops?
Definitely
There's something wrong?
Definitely not. And most definitely don't replace it with one that's a higher number, thinking that will get you more power. Not a good idea.
Can you tell our viewers the difference between an AFCI and a GFCI?
So an AFCI is a relatively new technology. So the acronym stands for Arc Fault Circuit Interrupter. And on a normal circuit breaker, like one of these here, where it just has the 15 amps and a handle, this circuit breaker is going to break that circuit when there is more than 15 amps flowing on the wires. Or if we get a short circuit where immediately the wires are connected and everything flows, and when that happens, we're going to get everything from the transformer, right? So it's going to break that on an overload, short circuit, or a ground fault. The AFCI is monitoring the circuit for arcing conditions. So let's say you have a loose wire on a receptacle or something, and you're plugged in your space heater, for instance, or your big TV or stereo, whatever it is, doesn't matter. And the connections start loosening up, and I actually have an example of what can start occurring when that happens, is you'll see there's burn marks on where the wire was connected. This will not trip a normal breaker, but it will trip an AFCI. So it's a technology that attempts to mitigate those sparking fire starters that can
preventing a fire.
Exactly.
It's fire prevention.
It's exactly what it is. Whereas a GFCI is a safety device, a life safety device. So if electricity is flowing out of this breaker, going to all the lights and anything else it's powering, and then it comes back, and those aren't the same, meaning that current is flowing through someone or something else that it shouldn't be, a GFCI is going to break that circuit immediately, and it's very sensitive.
So speaking of different circuits and stuff, what current electrical methods or older electrical methods are still out there and safe to use, and which ones are not?
Yes, so actually United Laboratories did a study on this recently, where they were collecting data on homes that were being demolished and the various older types of wiring methods that were used. The first iteration is called knob and tube, and you may have heard that before. So it's a cloth and rubber kind of compound that's used to insulate the wire. And because the rubber is used, they had to coat the wire in a zinc compound to keep it from corroding. When they were installed, they were done well, but now we have splices that are not in enclosures. And we've learned that that's not a great thing. So when a splice fails, it can cause, burning and heat and fire. So in knob and tube, they would just splice, take off, and head wherever that was convenient. So you have these splices in the walls, you don't know where they are. And then when blowing insulation happened, they would encapsulate all that in insulation. And so now you have dust, insulation, fire potential. At the end of the day, knob and tube needs to be replaced. It's just not safe anymore. The next step from there is called BX wiring. That is a steel jacket, kind of encirculates the conductors, which are cloth, and they look similar to knob and tube. Because they're in that steel jacket and protected, and they're spliced in enclosures, if it's in good shape, like it's not burnt apart or everything's in usable condition, that insulation and everything will still perform to its voltage rating. So knob and tube, let's get rid of it. BX, let's take a look and make sure. And then past that, you have non-metallic methods, you have flex and conductors, and a lot of these are still in play today. There's just a difference between whether the equipment ground is present or not.
And this is something an electrician like you needs to look at.
Yes, so this is why we get this call a lot, like, well, I opened up the receptacle and I saw it and I just replaced it like I saw it, like it was there, which is great if what was there was right. If it's not, and you're just copying what's there, you're just perpetuating a problem potentially. So certainly, we're all about empowering a homeowner to be able to take on certain maintenance items that are within, a skill set or a comfort level. But there are certain things where it's having the training, the experience, and the judgment to know what you're looking at is incorrect is key in preventing issues on safety and fire.
So electrical isn't necessarily a DIY.
Not really.
Well, and I'll add at this point that the reason that I reached out to Jason is because he's taught me a lot. And I am a firefighter and fire investigator, and this is what I see. I see creative electrical, I see a lot of electrical fires that can be prevented. So let's talk about fuse panels and electrical panels that are out there now that are problematic.
Basically, around here in Minnesota, there's primarily 4 types that can be problematic. And the first kind is you see like a fuse box where you have the little poker chip looking screw things, right? Yeah. A fuse does what it does well. It breaks a circuit on an overload or a short circuit very effectively and permanently until you replace the fuse, right? But 2 things, just the age of the equipment is one factor. But the second is that these blue ones are 15 amp and the orange one is 30 amp. And I've walked into homes where, well, I need more power, so I'll just put a 20 in. I'll put a 30 in. And you have wiring that's only good for 15 amps, fused at 30, that is a fire waiting to happen. You overload that, it will start a fire. So the fuse panels really need to go. That's just, we haven't had these in the homes for a long time. The other one that's a big one is called Federal Pacific. You can see them because they have little red handles here, and the position of the breaker is backwards. The problem with the Federal Pacific is that this panel design, the company was fraudulent in their listing, their UL listing when they sent these. So the breakers will not do what they're supposed to do roughly 30% of the time. The worst case scenario, you have an electric dryer and the motor seizes and it starts pulling all kinds of current and that breaker does not trip. This whole thing is going up in flames. And it's one of those things where, well, it's worked until now. Well, with electrical safety, it's all about redundancy, right? So if everything works now, if that logic applies, well, we don't need any of this stuff. Let's just bring our wires right to the transformer and hook everything up, and we're good, right? But when something does go wrong, it goes up in flames.
It goes really wrong.
Yes. So it's important that when we need it to work, that it does, and these don't. And so they flat out should be replaced. Zinsco is another brand out there. You can see they have kind of like these blue, red, green handles, and those are the different ampere ratings of the breakers. And the bus is on one side on this, and so they have all these little skinny breakers in here. I mean, other than they don't make replacements for this anymore, the bus design is known for overheating.
Yep.
So there's that.
That causes the fire.
Exactly. And then there's this other one called Pushmatic, and this is a first generation of circuit breaker that a company called ITE, which is famous in our industry. But these circuit breakers, they function, but the manual on these is you're supposed to grease the fittings annually. So, you know, that's asking a homeowner to rip their panel apart and grease all the fittings so that the breaker moves. So, there's a potential that they seize.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And hopefully they seize in the off position, but thankfully, you know, a lot of insurance companies will provide a permanent discount if you replace this stuff.
So talking about making your house safe, receptacles. When is it time to replace them, and what should people look for?
As you can see in this example, and this is one we saved from a recent service call, if there's deformation on the face of the receptacle, or you start seeing any kind of burning marks, or if your plug looks like this, right? It's time.
Yeah, it's time.
Yeah, that's so. Sometimes you'll see where there's kind of a burning, like a
discoloration,
right?
even.
Discoloration, or you'll see black marks, soot marks. Absent that, another thing you're looking for is when you have your plug, it should grip that really firmly.
And not slip out.
Exactly.
So you do the old bend the prongs to make it fit in.
Right.
That's not a fix.
Right, no, it's not, because now we're getting really poor contact in there. And poor connections equals heat and fire starting. So if your plug is wiggly wobbly, probably time to replace that receptacle.
You've been in a lot of houses and businesses. What is some of the most interesting creative electrical you've seen?
Recently, we had a client here in Plymouth who had a hot tub installed, and we were there to add a circuit and add in-floor heat in this porch that they were redoing. But when we climbed up in the attic, we noticed that it was just wires, no conduit, not actual cable, not secured, coming right in the panel, no connector, so we got sharp metal and the wires right there. And this is a 240 volt 60 amp feeder going to a hot tub, so it's just no GFCI. It takes just the most insignificant of transient voltage to drown a person. And I see that a lot on pools and hot tubs especially, because there's some folks out there that are installing these things without the permit, total fly-by-night, it's $500 and...
No DIY.
No DIY on that stuff. Electricity and body of water, let's do it right.
So recently, Current Electric Systems were at the Excelsior Fire Prevention Open House and Safety Fair with this display. And they had a constant line at their booth all night long. And could you explain this to our viewers?
Sure. So what we were trying to show is just different examples of the various components that is inside of a breaker panel, and also highlight some of the new technology, like you asked me previous about AFCI. This is an example of an AFCI breaker. This breaker has both functions, so AFCI and GFCI. This is a GFCI breaker. We have a smoke alarm here, and we also have a visual indicator of smoke alarms if you have folks that have hearing aids. We have a surge protector, so this protects the whole system. And then just a couple examples of showing that the GFCI is the buttons. A lot of people recognize this by the button and there's a breaker version too. And so we'd have the kids kind of push this, and that would trip this and shut that off, and you'd have kids kind of oh, I love this light, and then shut off, and hey, where'd it go? And we're showing them, well, this is how we reset it, and then the light comes back on, and just so they're a little less intimidated about, okay, this is what all this is. In addition to, we were showing off our fun little toy that we have. So the newest code change mandates accurate labeling, but that is very recent. So most of the panels out there are very nondescript on their labeling, right? So what we do when we change a panel, or as a service, folks can hire us just for this, is we bring this little device out, and we put these clamps on the wires, and we can go around with this little device, and it will tell us what circuit number, whatever it is we're looking at, is on. So then we're going ahead and making those labels accurate. Okay, it's the dining room north side receptacles, it's this. And so that in turn gets printed, put on there. So then if it's like, I need to shut this off, I know exactly where I'm going. I can turn it off instead of lights, outlet, I don't know.
So one thing that people don't think about is when they label their circuit panel is when the firefighters are coming in and trying to isolate part of your house because we've had a fire situation or we have a potential, and we're doing the old, oh, outlet, receptacle, blah, 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 Bob's room. Who's Bob? Oh, I think he lived here a couple years ago. Which room is his? I'm not sure. So it's so important to have them labeled. Or when grandma's taking care of the kids or you have the babysitter and they know something, you got to make it so they can find it to turn it off. So we've covered a lot. Is there anything else that you want to add?
Permits are your insurance policy. It's become less frequent, but we do get some folks that are like, why do we have to pull a permit? And I just want to touch on that. That permit is a record of who did the work, which means when you all get called on something, you're trying to find fault, and insurance companies are trying to find fault. And the permit means that I am confident to put my name on this as a permanent record. Also, let's say you hire an electrical contractor for a larger project and something happens. The owner passes away, whatever, and they go insolvent in the middle of your project. If you have the permit, there's a bond with the state. The state can come in, bring on another contractor to finish it up for you. All that insurance is built into that process. And frankly, for $50 or whatever it might be for a minor job, it's very cheap insurance. So permits are a good thing.
And I have to agree because in my business with being a fire investigator and a fire inspector, those permits are a safety piece.
Absolutely.
So Billy Bob down the street cannot do your electrical. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been very educational.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Welcome back to First Responder TV. It's time for Scam Alert. This segment alerts the public on scams that have been reported to local police departments.
The Federal Trade Commission reports receiving several thousand complaints regarding work-at-home scams. For every 60 work-at-home offers, perhaps one is legitimate. The scams continue to persist with new twists, such as claiming you can make money reading emails, sampling products, or completing surveys. Fraudsters are likely to advertise the scams through pop-up internet ads, emails, advertisements on social media, or manipulation of job recruiting websites. In most cases, the scams require you to pay money up front in exchange for an opportunity to work from home. In another twist, the scammer may send the new recruit a counterfeit check that looks real. The scammer asks the job seeker to cash the check and then wire back the cost of materials for the job. After the check is deposited, it bounces, but the recruit has already wired money to the scammer. Do not reply to unsolicited emails or pop-up internet ads offering a work-at-home opportunity. Be wary if the job requires you to pay money in advance. Legitimate companies usually pay you to work for them. Research the company and find out what kind of business it provides by contacting reputable sources, such as the Better Business Bureau or the Secretary of State's office. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. If you've lost money, contact your local and federal law enforcement agencies and file a report with the Federal Trade Commission at www.consumer.ftc.gov. The Minnesota Unemployment Insurance Program has received reports about a scam involving voice or text messages sent to unemployment applicants' phones. These messages tell applicants their unemployment account has been deactivated or suspended, and to reactivate by calling the phone number provided. When the number is called, the applicant is asked to provide confidential account information. The scammers are then able to access the debit card account and steal funds. Neither the Minnesota Unemployment Insurance Program nor U.S. Bank, who issues the unemployment debit card, contacts applicants through email, phone, or text message. Do not respond if you receive a communication that is asking for personal information. There are a number of unauthorized websites that offer assistance with applying for unemployment insurance benefits. Often, these websites ask you to enter private information, including your social security number, address, and work history. Some of these websites charge a fee, others do not. In order to help you protect your privacy, use only the official Minnesota Unemployment Insurance website at www.uimn.org to find information about the program, apply for benefits, or to access your account. The Minnesota Department of Health have received reports of scam phone calls from the phone number 614-644-8068 claiming to be doing survey research on behalf of the department. The Minnesota Department of Health is not making these calls. Do not provide this caller with personal or financial information. Legitimate public health calls do not ask for social security numbers, bank account information, or credit card numbers. Public health surveys collect information about health habits and patterns. Legitimate callers should be able to provide specific, verifiable contact information upon request. Phone survey calls typically are conducted by the Minnesota Department of Health staff or an authorized contractor. When in doubt about the legitimacy of a call, hang up and contact the Minnesota Department of Health directly at 651-201-4989. And remember, anyone who believes they have been the victim of an identity theft should contact their local police department.
Next on Safety Source, the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office Water Patrol will give us some snowmobile safety tips for when you're out on the lake.
If you're buzzed and doing this, to make yourself feel okay to drive,
ZWX.
you're not okay to drive.
YGKLVW. Regular you.
You know, right now with the ice conditions the way they are, we'd really have no snow cover. And so to be driving out here, we always tell people to check with either an ice auger, drill a hole, or take an ice chisel and check the ice thickness. The DNR recommendations for ice is 4 inches for a person, 5 to 7 for a snowmobile or ATV, 10 to 12 for a small vehicle, light truck, and then full-size pickup, 12 to 15. It all looks the same. And you know, it could be 12 inches here and it could be 9 inches 100 yards over that way, or even 50 feet you can have an inch or two discrepancy. The clear hard ice that forms initially is the strongest, safest ice. And then with the snow melt and you get, you know, deterioration and melting and things like that, that ice generally isn't as strong. Also, there's conditions that are always something to be concerned about, and that's moving water, and we have that in channels, creeks, rivers, so we recommend you stay out of the channels all year long. Whether you're on the ice or a trail, a good thing is to always be with a partner, and then also let somebody at home know that you're going to be out snowmobiling and you plan to go, you know, from this point to this point, and you plan on being home return time of this. You can outdrive your headlights, so your speeds are going to be greater than what you can actually see. Those fish houses, those vehicles, those people fishing can appear awful quickly if you're going fast. It's the same thing in the daytime. Your visibility is only so far, and if you're going at a high rate of speed, you may not see that pressure ridge or ice heave in the ice or open water. The other thing too, if you look at my snowmobile, on the back we have studs, and that does give you quite a bit of traction control on conditions like this. The direction you came in is the direction you want to go out. You know that the ice was safe 5-10 feet back from where you went in. Kick with your feet, and if you have ice picks, do this and use this to kind of pull yourself out. Otherwise you can roll too. The other thing that we recommend is that you wear a life jacket when you're out on the ice, even in the winter time. Don't drink and drive. It's the same on the snowmobiles as it is on the road. It impairs your thinking and your reaction times. Speed too. If you keep your speed down, you're going to see those ice houses, you're going to see the people fishing out there, you're going to see those holes in the water and any discrepancies on the lakes or trails.
Thanks for watching First Responder TV, your local public safety source. If you have an idea for a segment, an upcoming public safety or fire prevention event, please let us know. This is Kellie Murphy-Ringate giving you information you can use, share, and to live by. See you next time.